Welcome back once again. Another episode of Battlebots has just been aired, and today I'm here to give my review on it. Let's not waste any time and let's just jump straight into this. Similarly, Battlebots jump straight into things as Chris and Kenny come out to introduce the show, and the fight card, as always, looked exciting. Bloodsport versus Gigabyte, Claw Viper versus Overhaul, Starchild versus Mammoth, and of course the main event of Minotaur versus Cobalt. Just seeing that, I was so excited for this because there was a lot of crazy action here. Some hard-hitting spinners, some great control bots, and a quite unusual matchup with Starchild and Mammoth. Now the first fight was going to be Bloodsport versus Gigabyte. Now I was praying that Bloodsport would make up for their last performance. That Wheel of Misfortune looked awesome. Bloodsport not only looks like a beast, but they've done a lot to make that aesthetic and presentation also look the part. Bloodsport has to be one of the best looking spinners out of any of them. Like, maybe not the most competitive if you consider robots like Riptide, but in terms of just the combination of how good Bloodsport has been in the past, along with that aesthetic, it's hands down one of the best. They also had a wedge to deal with Gigabyte that they labelled Kilobyte, which, you know, that's pretty nice. And with that superior firepower, I just had a feeling that Bloodsport, if it could last, would have the advantage. Gigabyte came out looking about the same as usual, you know, though it is a very capable robot. Now, they came out as well with a cutout of Brent Riker from Robotic Death Company, who right now is battling cancer. God, I didn't expect to hear that, but I genuinely hope that Brent's doing okay. Cancer is an awful, awful thing, and really, I just hope that he's doing okay. Hopefully, we'll get to see him come back next season once he's managed to get this all sorted and he's feeling better. Now, the match starts, and surprisingly, instead of spinning up, Bloodsport just guns down for Gigabyte. Gigabyte runs away and manages to get up to speed, and Bloodsport really wasn't able to stop that from happening, and Gigabyte got some good shots in. Bloodsport, however, then begins to spin up to speed and delivers some absolutely massive shot. One shot, in fact, was reminiscent of their last fight, though Bloodsport did survive this time and was back for more. Spinning up while Gigabyte seemed to have stopped being able to spin. I'm guessing something similar happened to Gigabyte that happened to Shredderator. Bloodsport is causing all kinds of sparks at this point as Gigabyte begins to smoke. If I had to guess, it might have been a weapon belt from trying to get spinning but failing, though at the same time, Gigabyte did end up dying and got counted out. So it could have been anything that was smoking there, as the win is given to Bloodsport. Now, it wasn't quite as amazing a win as I think Bloodsport needed, but we really did get to see some of the potential of this more powerful Bloodsport. Let's hope we can get to see what they have when they have a bar attached in a future fight, as that'll be when we see the upper limits of Bloodsport's damaging potential. It was a fun bout between two full body spinners to start us off, but I definitely know that these robots are going to have much more entertaining fights. Next up was Claw Viper versus Overhaul, which I was already excited for because I knew this could be a fun driving competition. It's good to see a bout where two promising non-damaging robots get to properly showcase themselves against each other. I could already tell based on this that there were probably going to be people who won't enjoy this simply because there's no hard-hitting damage because it's two grab and lifters, but for me that didn't matter. A great control battle can be just as entertaining when it's in the right hands. Now, I wasn't sure how to predict this, as both robots have the same thought process, but I still felt Claw Viper had the advantage due to the crazy drive, so I was definitely leaning towards them. Another thing that I was surprised about was how Overhaul only brought out 2 forks, and clearly the design can use 4, as demonstrated in their little picture, and the fact that there's 2 additional slots. I imagine having all 4 would have helped them a little bit more with the ground game, is all I'm saying. Now the fight begins, and Claw Viper of course rams into Overhaul, though it doesn't make much effect, but a second ram does manage to flip Overhaul over. They're quickly pushing Overhaul around, but they do end up getting stuck in the kill source. Overhaul tries to take advantage, but can't, as the moment Claw Viper gets free, they are out of there. They're just not sitting still. Claw Viper ends up sending Overhaul into the screws, and Overhaul is just flopping and floundering around. Even when there's a stalemate, Claw Viper has the much stronger drivetrain, meaning that they can push Overhaul around so easily. Now, while Claw Viper is dancing with Overhaul, Overhaul does manage to push Claw Viper into the screws at one point, but that's about it, as every time they get even a minor lift in, Claw Viper gets away. Overhaul finally manages to hook a wheel guard and gets a major ram in, however, so Overhaul, it wasn't like they were doing nothing the entire fight. Claw Viper did have some issues self-riding for a moment, but gets back in, and Overhaul doesn't get a chance to really take advantage, as Claw Viper gets another amazing lift in. Overhaul does manage to wedge Claw Viper right as time runs out, but wasn't able to turn the tide. Claw Viper won by unanimous decision, and it wasn't a surprise after such an incredible performance. Honestly, this was a really fun fight. I know some people won't like it because, you know, there wasn't a bunch of damage or big flips, and sometimes the spectacle of Battlebots is its most intriguing thing that draws you in, but to me, this was an incredible display from Claw Viper, and I gotta say, Overhaul wasn't too shabby either. Claw Viper is absolutely moving on to the round of 32 after these qualifying rounds, now that they're 3-0. As Claw Viper, in my opinion, is easily the best grabber and lifter we've seen in the Battlebots reboot, and possibly one of the best grabber and lifters Battlebots has ever seen of all time, based on these performances. Still, their fight with Hypershock will be their toughest challenge by far, so it'll be interesting to see how they'll cope against the meta of Battlebots. Will they do well, or will we see the same old when those two collide? After these performances, I cannot wait to see how that goes. After that, we got Horizon versus Monsoon, and let's be real, did any of us expect it to go any other way? Come on! Just to sink in the obviousness of who was going to win even more, Monsoon comes out with an interesting anti-horizontal wedge, which honestly looked really cool. It worked really well with the design. It's nice to see them mentioning Horizon's smaller weight class robots, and they even showed Huge's smaller robot as well, just continuing to show that a lot of these teams, they start off with smaller weight class robots and then expand. It's often not a good idea to start off with a heavyweight robot. Some people can make that work, but a lot of the time you're going to see teams that start off small and then work their way upwards. Still, I knew that unless Monsoon completely crapped the bed, this was only going to end with Horizon dying pretty much instantly. Now, apparently they had Horizon put more power in the spinner this time, which didn't mean anything. The fight began and Monsoon rushed in with a quick hit, then some more spikes from some small hits and wedging Horizon. They finally then back away to get up to speed, and they flip Horizon over. They back away, and then they get one more massive hit, knocking them on top of the pulverizer and leaving a massive gash in Horizon's bottom, which you can see when they're being counted out. This wasn't much of a fight, let's be honest, but it was an amazing showcase from Monsoon. They're back and they're here to stay, as they sent bits and pieces of Horizon everywhere from their shots. It's happy to see Monsoon is firing on all cylinders once again, and I hope that they can continue this performance in their next bouts. Next up was Starchild versus Mammoth, which I could already see was likely going to go into Mammoth's favour, as they managed to survive a fight with Huge in the past, if barely, and Starchild I had a feeling was going to have a harder time hitting that crucial blow. But given how Mammoth's spinner broke last time, it wasn't something I could be entirely confident in. They also brought out Anna Zolnikov of Ripperoni, who was joining commentary, and which is another nice choice for the commentary team, as while the vertical spinner is definitely a far more conventional weapon choice, with the rear flywheel and overall design, it's definitely one of the less conventional ways we've seen that weapon type used. So I definitely like the choice of having Anna's viewpoint on this match. The battle begins and Mammoth rushes in with a nice lift, though they end up flipping themselves and have to self-right. Starchild goes in, gets a glancing blow, but nothing massive. It seems that they're still struggling to get those all-important shots with what honestly looks to be a pretty nice weapon. It's a shame, really, but that means that Mammoth gets to get another nice lift in, but then an enormous tangle. The robots for a moment looked like they were completely stuck. You saw Starchild trying to get a shot in at that weapon chain, which they were very close to. And honestly, if the fight had to be stopped there, how in the world would you unstick that? I don't even know if there's a safe way of managing that one. Thankfully, the robots manage to free themselves, and Starchild ends up getting hit by the pulverizer. Mammoth flips Starchild again and keeps the aggression going. Starchild is struggling to get those big meaningful hits in, and Mammoth is relentless. Every time the Starchild even gets close to Mammoth, Mammoth pushes and flips them away. Mammoth's flipper does end up getting worse for wear as time goes on after all of the abuse it's been through, but it's still working, and thankfully doesn't break as the match comes to a close. The judges give it to Mammoth, and it's awesome to see Mammoth working as expected, as it's always such a fun, unique robot to watch. The spectacle of Mammoth is something I hope returns year after year, because there's nothing quite like it. Starchild, meanwhile, is definitely struggling to get a big shot in, and if this continues, it will really hamper their chances of moving on. I hope they can keep working on the robot to get them to where they need to be, because I could see them making a huge upset if things work out. Overall though, it was still a very fun fight from two unconventional robots. Next up is Triton versus Copperhead. Now, I was already worried that this could end up being disappointing based on Triton's performance last fight. And plus, Copperhead is scarily consistent, so I felt this could end up being very one-sided. Now, apparently the team did try to work to get Triton to be more effective, and Copperhead comes out with an anti-horizontal front, which I'm not sure if I fully get. It just seems a little bit too small to be of much use, but I'm not a builder, so chances are someone will be able to explain to me how it manages to be more effective than just the regular forks. Now, the fight begins, and Copperhead rushes in while Triton tries to hold back and spin up. Now, Triton ends up getting some increasingly better shots. I'm starting to get some hope for Triton that the spinner might finally be dialed in and is about to unleash some huge hits, but right as I'm typing all this out, oh my god! Triton gets hit from behind and is absolutely gutted. Bits and pieces just spill out of the robot. There is absolutely nothing stopping that armor from completely breaking apart the moment Copperhead's drum gets there. Batteries flying everywhere. That was unbelievable. Unfortunately, because Triton was in its dying blows, was able to smack one of the batteries right under Copperhead, Copperhead ends up also getting cannoned out, leading to a double KO. Which, I can't believe it, that means that goes to a judge's decision, but let's be real, the judges were only ever going to go one way after that, who unanimously gave it to Copperhead. Because of fucking course! My god, what a clash. This was definitely very disappointing as a fight, as it ended before things could become an epic clash, but that mega hit absolutely was one of the most destructive Battlebots has ever seen. Now we've seen Copperhead destroy two opponents. Kraken and Ripperoni better be worried, because the Copperhead curse may be coming for them next. Then there's a main event high package for Minotaur and Cobalt, and there's no crazy story, no big drama. This is a case of two just incredible robots. Two incredible teams that have made some extremely high tier robots that are ready to battle it out. You have Team Cobalt mentioning about how they've got some special forks made to try and deal with Minotaur. And Minotaur is just like, we've got Daniel. And, I mean, to be fair, Daniel is one of the most aggressive drivers ever. Minotaur is good, but one of the things that makes Minotaur one of, if not the best drum spinner of all time, is the fact that Daniel is so damn good at it. He has got driving a drum spinner down to a science. It is absolutely brutal the way he goes, and I knew that this was going to be an exceptional fight, one where I genuinely wasn't sure who was going to come out on top. But before that, there was Lucky versus Kraken, which I felt could be interesting. Lucky has been better than ever lately, but we're facing a far more dangerous Kraken, as we saw in the fight with Beta. Saying that, I also knew Kraken had its own driving issues last time, and I was hoping that they had them fixed for this fight. Now, Lucky also came down with some additional armor to try and protect vital components from overhead attacks, and which was very smart given what Kraken was able to do in the fight with Beta. Now, the fight started, and Kraken had some driving issues right out of the gate. Clearly, one of the drive was not working. Lucky pushed them around before backing away. Kraken tried using the gyro of the spinner to move around, but Lucky just took control, getting a massive flip in, sending them into the upper deck. Kraken eventually climbs back down, but is immediately thrown back onto the upper deck. Kraken's spinner at this point begins to lose its efficiency as it ends up losing one of the weapon belts, so you can see that the spinner is really struggling to get up to speed now. They climb back down eventually and just get flipped back onto the upper deck. This is absolute bullying. They eventually get back down and just Lucky just keeps flipping them around. Kraken really can't do anything. It's just being pushed around the battle box, and at this point it's just focusing on surviving. Lucky holds Kraken in place for some pulverizer shots before getting in another flip and then pinning Kraken again. Lucky does begin smoking in the end and does end up losing one half of their drive, but this is like at the very end of the fight. The judges end up giving it to Lucky, and I'm gonna be honest, this was a bit of a disappointing fight. I'm definitely happy to see that Lucky is doing as well as it is, but Kraken was basically dead on arrival in this fight. It was just a very prolonged squash match. I can definitely say there's a lot of promise in Kraken's new design, but there's some serious teething issues that are holding them back. And finally, the main event is here! Minotaur versus Cobalt. Admittedly, I was hoping Minotaur would win this, but with the power of Cobalt's spinner, I genuinely wasn't certain on this one, especially with those forks. Cobalt also comes out with the Brent cutout. I gotta say that there's a lot of pedigree in this main event. On one hand, you've got Riobots, which has had tremendous success in not only Battlebots, but robo games, with the Turo line of robots, genuinely an incredible team in their own right. And of course, you have the union, the unholy union of Team Robotic Death Company and Team Carbide. Veterans of Battlebots and Robot Wars champions combining. This was an absolutely incredible main event. Two incredibly made robots by two championship level teams. But saying that, two championship teams that have never won the Giant Nut. They've had success in other competitions, but never gotten to the very top in Battlebots. The fight begins and both robots come out a little slowly as they get up to speed. Then we get to see a good exchange of blows back and forth, though Cobalt ends up getting the better as they get a huge shot sending Minotaur into the air. Minotaur does manage to rip a fork off and keeps the aggression going, refusing to back down. Cobalt though does exchange some sparks with Minotaur before getting another huge hit in. Minotaur has managed to rip off the smaller forks of Cobalt, and Cobalt only has one large fork remaining. Lose that and I knew that it was likely that they'd be done at that point. On the flip side though, Minotaur has also lost a fork at this stage, which, given how Minotaur is stupidly durable, that's kind of crazy really. There's a great back and forth of sparks, both robots spinning hard, and clearly another huge shot is on the cards, though right now the robots are at a stalemate. Cobalt can't seem to get under with only one fork left, and Minotaur with only one fork left is also struggling to get under Cobalt. It leaves it to a situation where at any moment, one of these robots is about to die. And in fact, both robots end up getting a big hit that smack each other away. Cobalt's spinner briefly falters and Minotaur begins to smoke. The robots are beginning to buckle, but some big hits tip Cobalt over. Cobalt does manage to self-right using some of the force from Minotaur to bounce back, but Minotaur has learnt now that Cobalt is about to die, and they learn from that. With the second tip over, they leave Cobalt to be counted out, which honestly is lucky for them as the smoke from Minotaur has gotten a lot worse, and I feel that if the fight had gone the full 3 minutes, well, Minotaur likely wouldn't have been able to keep going much longer. Honestly, this was an exceptional main event. You can really tell the caliber of these two teams as they have a knack for some exceptional spinners, and they were absolutely brilliant at driving them and going toe-to-toe. It really came down to the wire as to who was going to win, and I think Cobalt would have likely gotten the judge's decision had it gone the full 3 minutes. Minotaur, though, with an absolutely legendary win, they are also in the top 32 for certain. I have no doubt about that in my mind. Now, overall, I'll actually admit to being a little mixed on this episode. Fights like Mammoth and Starchild, while fun, could have been better, while Triton, Copperhead, and Kraken and Lucky had Kraken and Triton failed to really deliver. With that in mind, there's still some incredible fights in the episode, such as Overhaul versus Claw Viper and Cobalt versus Minotaur, so there's still some absolutely fun fights to watch. I'm just not sure this is my favourite episode. overall had its highlights. With that all being said though, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, please be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and be sure to hit that notification bell for more. Comment and let me know what you thought of this episode of Battlebots. And with that all being said, I will see you all next week for the next review. Bye guys!